Okay, now we're into part 2 of Unit 3A, and I want to back up for a moment. Look, these percentage problems, the reference material for that can be found on page 129. Now let's get on with question 6. And it says the total rainfall in Lake Town in 1999 was 8.9 inches. In 2000 it was 1.3 inches. And we have to find the absolute change and the relative change. And the formula for that is, now we're talking 6, it is the new value minus the reference value, and that equals the ABS change. And by the way, you can find this information on page 130. If you want to find the relative change, well, that's going to be the new value minus the reference value divided by the reference value times 100%, and that'll give you a percent. So that's the relative change, or percent change. So let's do this problem. So our new value is 1.3 inches minus our old value is 8.9 inches, and that equals a absolute change of negative 7.6, and those are inches. The percent change is going to be 1.3 minus 8.9 divided by 8.9 and times 100%, which is just multiplying by 1. And that's going to be, when we compute that quotient, negative 85.4%. And so it turns out B is our answer. Now, let's move on to number 5. And it's a very similar problem. This time, they're talking about compared values. So page 132, if you'll refer to that, has the information for compared values. And so in the college, there are 1,300 males, and those will be the compared values, and our reference value will be the 1,160 females. We want to know what the absolute difference is and the relative difference is. So we've got 1,300 minus 1160, which equals 140, and that's the relative or absolute difference. For the percent difference or relative difference, we've got 1,300 minus 1160 divided by 1160, the reference value, times 100%, and that equals 12.1%. So here was our plan. We had the compared value minus the reference value divided by the reference value times 100%. And that gave us our relative difference. And so, oh, by the way, the answer was D. Now, let's move on to question 8. And for question 8, we're given that the area of Jose's apartment is 23% more than the area of Alan's apartment. Determine which of the statements below is true. Well, if you look on page 136, they indicate how to do this. And so Jose's apartment is 100% of the area of Alan's plus an additional 23% more than Alan's. And if we add these up, we get 123% of the area of Alan's apartment. And let's see if there's a statement here that corresponds to that. The area of Jose's apartment is 123% of the area of Alan's apartment. So it is D. So now for number 9, we are given that the regular selling price of an item is $106. For a special year-end sale, the price is at a markdown of 20%. Find the discount price. So then, as you'll see on page 134, the selling price is going to be 100% minus 20% of the original price. So it's going to be 80% of the original price. So 80%, and by the way, 80% of, and that's 80 over 100, or 80% times 106 equals, and that's going to be 0.8 times 106. And the product of those two is 84.8. And if we're talking dollars, then that corresponds to the answer in A. And this was number 9. So now let's go on to the final problem, and that's problem 10. And please refer to page 129 for fractions and decimals and so on. So 10, and it says write this as a fraction. So 55 and 5/9%. Well, that's the same as 55 plus 5 over 9%. Now, if we were to write this as a decimal, or excuse me, if we were to add fractions, get a common denominator, we'd have 9 times 55 plus 5 all over 9, and that's a percent. Now let's factor in 5 out of each of these terms. So we have 5 times, excuse me, 9 times, and 5 times what is 55, and that's times 11, isn't it? 11, so times 11 plus 1 over 9, and that's a percent. And this equals, well, if 9 times 11 is 99, plus 1 is 100, so 5 times 100 over 9%. And now, let's multiply by 1 in the form of 1 over 100%. And now the percents divide out, the hundreds divide out, and 1 times 5 is 5. And downstairs we have the 9, and we've got it, and that corresponds to D. So there, we have completed the Unit 3A worksheet.